sometimes people just need to be shown that these tools are out there, and here's a applicable use for them that you could
Mm-hmm.
do today, because I think when Ebsynth came out, it was very technical. If you watch their tutorials, just like create a visual style over your video, and it doesn't go further than that. It doesn't show you something fun you can do with it.
Yeah.
And I think we need more creative tutorials out there. We need information presented in a way that conveys the output of what you're gonna do.
Audio's going on audition. I got you here, so I think officially everything is okay. We can.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going.
Okay, great. Well, it is really great to meet you. Thanks for coming on. When I first asked you if you'd like to do a talk, I wasn't really sure if I'd even hear back. So the fact that you said yes, I really appreciate.
Yeah, of course. I like to make myself as available as possible, which becomes a lot harder after you have 1 million subscribers versus 3,000 that I had in November. But
yeah, so
when and where I can.
I was skimming through some of the other interviews you did just to try to not be too repetitive, but that still might happen. And one of the guys who was talking to you, yeah, you brought up having 3,000 in November. That's a tremendous amount of growth in a short period of time. That must feel really weird.
Yeah. I think I said a similar thing to him, that it felt like a long time coming, but also it went far beyond my expectations.
Yeah.
It's hard to gauge how accessible your own stuff is, to a certain level. Like, I felt like I was kind of niche. I'm going to make sure to say niche because I said niche and I saw some comments about that. But I figure I always thought my stuff might be kind of niche, and I think some of it still is. But so I thought I might, if I did blow up, I thought I'd hit 50K to 100K, but it just kind of kept the ball going. So that was amazing to see.
No, I mean, that's really incredible. I mean, I saw right now, it looks like you're like 1,090,000, but back in December, 100,000. So the fact that, like 100,000 is an incredible milestone. So the fact that just happened like 11 more times is pretty.
It is funny because YouTube, I actually just got them this week, or one's coming tomorrow. I got the golden play button for 1 million subscribers.
Yeah.
And the silver's coming after because they never sent me it. So I'm getting the 100,000 after the 1 million. So
that's
even
great.
YouTube couldn't keep up, I guess. I don't know.
I know that there's like a diamond one too. I don't know if that's for 10 million or what, but that's hilarious to me.
I think it's 10 million, and then at 50 million you get like your own unique one, but who's gonna hit 50 million? That's like a insane.
Well, maybe like the Mr. Beast guy, that's about it.
Yeah, Mr. Beast,
he's on a tirade. Yeah, well, see, it's funny, you just said that your work is niche, but when I was first going through it, I really have found every sketch I've watched of yours like really, really funny. So I think that your consistency is really good. And there's this comedian I like named Gerard Carmichael, and I think he's really intentional with the work he makes. And something he said in an interview once was how he kind of believes that people find more connection and specificity. And he was saying how, if you make stuff for like the lowest common denominator of appeal, then you're kind of scratching on the surface of what people find enjoyable. But if you make something with a really, really narrow perspective, in a weird way, people kind of connect to it more because they can kind of feel the intention behind it.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I think niche was more so that I wasn't seeing so much of what I was doing. A lot of YouTube sketch comedy is that sort of punchline. You almost get the joke by reading the title kind of video, So I think my stuff has a lot of relatability, and there's a lot of, like what you said, specificity. I'm looking at very specific things rather than like broader or appealing things. And And it was more so I just wasn't seeing a lot of success for something like I was doing, and that's where I felt uncertain how much appeal there would be.
Yeah, it can definitely be a little bit frustrating doing something consistently for a really long time and then eventually just thinking like am I crazy? Is there no appeal value to this? Like, am I just catering to like this group of 100 people across the country?
Yeah, it did wind up feeling like that because it was my friends and I have a lot of friends who help out and act and play characters, and we were all like loving what we were making, and there was a lot of conversations like, what's wrong? Like, what is it? Just YouTube? Is it like
Yeah.
Reddit? It was so hard to break through, and I think that hump and like reaching that hump is like the gauntlet. That's the test to see if you can like push through and make this work for yourself, right?
Yeah. I have no idea how to appeal to Reddit. If I get 7 up votes, it's a good day.
Yeah, they're very temperamental. You don't know.
Yeah.
One day they'll hate you for self promotion, and the next day they'll love you.
Yeah.
Like I faced a lot of that. Yeah.
You were kind of talking to how your sketches are a little bit less broad and they kind of focus on really specific jokes and whatnot, and I think that your titles kind of are good at hooking people because, like you said, it seems like it's going to be a little bit relatable or maybe a familiar concept, but I think that you really drive your jokes into completely unexpected territories. Like, recently you made the 99% of men make this simple mistake video, and when like that, I don't want to ruin it, but like the place that goes to is just so out of left field of where you think it would start. Somebody might think it's going to start as like a very generic like BuzzFeed sort of like commentary on dating, but it goes somewhere completely different. So I think that sort of stuff can make your videos a little bit addicting, looking at the other ones and thinking what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't want to be predictable. And like I think that's why I also do such a wide variety of stuff, because I don't want to be predictable for myself. As an artist, if you start to feel predictable for like you're not surprising yourself, you're gonna stop surprising your audience, right? So always trying new things is important to me, but also YouTube is just this like amazing place with all these like built-in like tropes and stuff that you could really play on, like those clickbait titles where you think what the video is. It's like, oh, I've seen a title like this 100 times.
Yeah.
And then you take it there, and then you take it further, or you just turn left right away and go some other way, or you hit 5 different points off of the like one central point.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what really sets my stuff apart for me in a way that I'm fulfilled creating it, is that I'm always trying to build some sort of scene or story or characters. It's not so much just these blank slates to communicate a joke. There's a feel for the people in the films,
Yeah.
And there's like a story being told regardless of how simplistic or silly the idea is.
Yeah, I definitely think that comes through, and I imagine it makes making the videos a lot more rewarding for you.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching your video, the guy who's responsible for serving sizes, and I think that was a video where I really noticed what you're saying, because the manager guy who didn't seem to really think that the guy was small. I was thinking how somebody might make that sketch and the joke might be that the manager just doesn't get what's going on, and they might just kind of play the straight man against the comedic situation, and he's just kind of he's like sort of neutral the whole sketch, just being like, I don't see what you're talking about. But you brought it to this place where he was like emotionally upset about the idea of having to fire his little buddy, and I think your characters wind up becoming very multifaceted, and I think that emotional thing really kind of hooks you in.
Yeah, and I have some more dramatic films on my channel, the feature length particularly, and I think like that's what I love in film. Even in comedies, I love the feeling of a real character. Somebody you could latch onto and be like, "Yes, I get that," and then you're laughing, or you're laughing and then you're like, "Oh, damn, I get that."
Yeah.
Like you pull back and you're like, "Oh, wait a second," and
Yeah.
and yeah.
I'd love to talk to you about the features you make, because I watched Pretend That You Love Me, and I gotta say I was really blown away. I think that you did a fantastic job with that piece. It seems really personal, and I'm not even really sure what to ask you about it, but it sounds like you made it over the course of like half a year or so. Did you start that last summer?
It came out last summer.
Oh, okay.
So I started it the summer of 2019, and from the first day of filming to like releasing it was about a year.
Wow.
So
okay.
it took it about a year to make. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really incredible. I don't want to ruin the film too much, but I think it takes some unexpected turns, and the first leg of it where those turns weren't even made yet. I thought that the performances were really, really good, and I felt a big emotional connection. And I'm curious, as a director, like how when you were first coming up with the idea for that project, how did you decide where you were going to start? Because I imagine, bringing in other people to be in a movie like that, you'd have to kind of explain the concept a bit, and how it's going to be filmed, mixing some natural conversation with scripted stuff. Like how I don't know, how did you start something like that?
In some ways, I had been building up to it. I have this series called I'm Going to Be Famous that I touched upon some romance of my real life romance in. And I have a film called Island, which is, without giving away too much, it is the world's most abstract breakup movie. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure even some people don't come away realizing that, but that's what it was to me. And there was these elements of reality where I love stuff like do you know like Kiarostami, like Iranian like meta cinema, like
No, I don't think I do.
So there's a lot. There's this whole wave of this would be a whole separate tangent, but essentially there's a lot of filmmakers from Iran who create these very meta films that are, toying with the idea of what's real and what's not, and a lot of it stems from the Iranian government's strict control over what art can be. And so in this sphere where you have all these rules, they have to get creative to like get away with doing stuff. And these like meta films kind of branch off from that. And I've always found it an immense relatability there, because I feel we are also inundated with rules. It's not dictated by a tyrannical government that is controlling our art, but I think rules we put on ourselves, and rules that if you're trying to make it in the industry, things you're supposed to do. And I've always felt such a strong connection to that, because I'm like, how do you create a film different than how people want you to do it or tell you to do it? And I think that's the heart of what the Iranian meta cinema is. And so I got really attached to this idea of maybe things can feel real, or maybe things can actually be real, but it could still play as a narrative. And like, I think the impetus of Pretend That You Love Me came from this belief I had built up over the years that my struggles are inherently compelling. And I think that's the strongest thing my art has given me. It's you don't need to exaggerate, you don't need to purely escape from reality. You can present your struggles, whether it is in a more abstracted way or in a very direct way, and people will relate because everyone goes through stuff. You know,
Yeah.
everyone goes through. The specifics hardly matter. Everyone goes through heartache and loss and loneliness and all this stuff, and the belief that just presenting myself as is was not only very therapeutic, but I think it's very freeing for people who watch it because they can be like, oh, my problems could matter too, and my problems could make for compelling art, and they could make for, you know, they could inspire other people to be more open and express themselves. And so the more logistical answer is the start of the film was I don't want to spoil too much because the film is always playing with the idea
Mm-hmm.
of is it real or is it not, even throughout.
Mm-hmm.
But there, the women who are in the film involved in this idea that like let's record ourselves going on dates, you know, dates. But you have to see the film because there
Yeah,
are
yeah.
answers there. But and we essentially just took it scene by scene. I had no grander plan, and the real world does come into and out of the film many times in ways I couldn't have premeditated.
Yeah.
And I grew very disinterested in scripts a couple years ago, and I haven't scripted anything since
Mm-hmm.
because I like the looseness. And the looseness lends itself brilliantly to a no budget movie. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you script something, you're waiting on this to fall through, a location or the actors you need, or if it's a bigger scene, maybe you need a crew. And when you don't script something, you could just film that day no matter what. You know
Mm-hmm.
what's happening that day. It can be part of the movie. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that was how I approached my movie Island and Pretend That You Love Me. And Island is at least for most of it, it's a little more abstract.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I was operating from this space of like I want to create emotionally. I want to try to express what I'm feeling that day through the medium of film.
Yeah. I
And
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was a very long-winded answer, but I hope
Oh, no, no.
it got
No,
to
no.
something.
I
Yeah.
that's honestly about how long I tend to talk with people as well. So don't feel bad about it at all. I completely understand. I agree with like everything you just said in terms of wanting to make things non-traditionally and, you know, finding ways to get art out there, even if it means, you know, breaking some conventional rules like scripting or mixing like natural with planned. I have well, and for one thing, I think it's really great that you explained the inspiration from those Iranian movies, because that I think that brings a great context. You know, I never would have thought that unless you told me. I'll have to look into that wave of cinema. With with Pretend That You Love Me, when you started to integrate the real world into the movie world, it really blew me away, because I realized that the story and, you know, the sorts of feelings that were going to be transmitted, it was just going to be elevated to a whole, you know, new level that I didn't anticipate with the initial story. So I think that you were really successful with that. And with Island, I have not. I feel bad saying this. I have not had a chance to finish it. I had to stop watching it just because of how my day was scheduled. But I watched like the first half hour, and same thing. I think that your resourcefulness really comes through with how you make things, and I went to film school here in Arizona, and I think film school really drives a lot of conventions into your head in terms of you have to do this way and you have to check these boxes or else people won't like it or people won't get it, your idea won't come across. So I think there's a lot of people out there who want to make art, but they take, you know, maybe 5 times as long to get an idea out there as they could because, you know, they're, you know, carefully premeditating when they could just be, you know, trying stuff and making stuff. So I think it's really incredible that you're able to make stuff at such a high quality without scripts.
And I think that just comes with, you know, a lot of practice. I think I always say I'm not doing anything like anyone else couldn't do. You know, obviously I have years of experience and practice, but I have a Blackmagic pocket camera and I don't do any lighting ever. I hate lighting. I just use available lights or a natural light. And it's just like I've always said, get rid of the stuff that annoys you about filmmaking, you know, because there are these conventions. It's like, oh, you do need lights. You got to make it look like a film. It's like, no, why can't it just look like life? You know, why can't I just capture like a room dimly lit or not looking like cinematic or... And so I hate lighting because I think it slows everything down, and I try my best to be incredibly efficient, and I think that's important. And so I got rid of lighting. I didn't like writing scripts, so I got rid of that. And then I just practiced with what was left, you know, and figured out what can I create. I got rid of these things that were making it a bore for me, so now it should be fun. So let's do that, you know. And
Yeah.
I think my shorts and features feel very different, but they come from a similar school of improv and make it up as you go. And I think it really just translates pretty directly because, you know, you could film a 2-3 minute short in a day. So just make 20-30 of those and you have an hour long feature, you know, that loosely connect or string together. And I'm excited at the prospect of anyone who saw my film getting inspired in any way to create something similarly who might have been bogged down by the conventions prior. I think that's what excites me most about having an audience now is being able to show people this alternative.
Yeah. When I made my capstone film for film school, I really enjoy being a director of a project, but I also really enjoy being a cinematographer. I'm filming myself right now with a Blackmagic Pocket as well, and I tend I tend to use available light a lot as well, just because I like how it looks, and you know, a camera like this can do well with it. And when I was, I've just always thought I wasn't, you know, really the best writer, you know, so if I finally came up with the idea for a story that I was excited about, then I was so excited to have a story to tell, but then the next problem was, you know, writing a dialogue that doesn't sound bad when people say it. So when I made my capstone film, I just decided to make it silent, and I just thought, you know, how can I tell this whole story only using, you know, images and actions. And right now I'm making a new short film where similarly it's gonna be very abstract and kind of just, you know, silent, and I'm just trying to capture a lot of really nice images that I think, you know, when weaved together, you know, paint something really nice. And I've definitely gone through thoughts of like, is this gonna translate? Is this, you know, something that people will enjoy? But I've always kind of thought, similar to what you were saying, that if you just try to make something from the heart and, you know, tap into like a specific emotion or point of view, I think, like you said, people are kind of inherently interesting and relatable, and the way that we see things is very unique, you know. So it I think seeing people do the sort of stuff that you do is definitely inspiring to a lot of video makers, because it makes them realize, okay, I don't need to overcomplicate this. I can just go make something.
That, and you know, there is this element where I call everything on my channel films, and that's very intentional. You know, because I think there is this. I went to film school too, and I'd love to see your films. If they're on your channel, I'm sorry
Sure.
I haven't.
Oh no,
gotten
it's
around to
it's
checking
okay.
them
It's
out.
okay. I'll email it over.
Yeah, but I went to film school, and there was so much discouragement, not just from like the conventions, but from some of the faculty, from some of the professors, and there's equally a lot of encouragement. I don't want to sound bad. I had a lot of great friends and a lot of great professors, but there was kind of this bummer attitude about things, and it's like, well, yeah, you're gonna have to be a PA for 10 years, and you're gonna have to, and it's like, oh, well, that's how it goes,
Yeah.
and then people who like I made a movie, like my movie, I don't use crews ever. Like it's literally just me and my friends, and if I need a shot of me, I just hand it to the closest friend, and we don't like have like roles and labels. It's just, and that's why my films end with a film by whole list of everyone you see, because
Gotcha.
everyone does a little everything. I do all the editing just because that's the tedious work part that I don't want to make other people do, and
Yeah,
I get an enjoyment out of it, and but where was I going with this?
Oh, well, you were just talking about how in school sometimes they can be a little bit discouraging, and the whole PA for 10 years thing, so you're just being resourceful with the people around you.
Yeah, I was shocked they didn't pitch an alternative, and I watch more YouTube than anything else. I don't watch much TV, but I watch YouTube, and I love watching movies. I wish I had more time, but like YouTube is just this thing, and I'm like, how is this not pitched in film school as filmmaking?
Yeah.
Especially if like I went to Pratt in Brooklyn, and a lot of the professors came from more experimental backgrounds where it's like a film can be anything, A film can be a shot of a lemon. I forget who did that. It was like a 7-minute shot of a lemon or something.
Yeah.
Or like, those classic experimental films. And I'm like, if this is a film, then anything that's audio and visual is a film. So there is this discouragement inherently online of, oh, you're making videos, you're a YouTuber, and there's a connotation with that it's like, that's not as serious, that's not as artful. And I think just take it, and I had some people like, why do you call it films? I'm like, have you seen some of the like most famous like shorts and experimental shorts? It's like anything's a film.
Yeah.
And I call it films because I think it signals to art in a way that video doesn't. And I think people want to feel like an artist. They want to feel like a creator beyond like, pure content, and there's nothing wrong with content in the idea that you're putting a lot of stuff out. I think that's valuable too. But I think people want to feel like an artist, and limiting them to, oh, you just make videos feels very discouraging in a way that you're making films. It's like, you're already doing it. So great. Chase that, and that is really the heart of why I call everything films. And they're videos too, I'm not in denial that they're videos. They're videos, they're sketch comedy, they're skits, and they're films. And like, I don't know why. There's a lot of people you'll run into that are kind of eager to label things.
Yeah.
And eager to like, yeah.
I think with the internet, there's definitely a sense of, pretentious police where they think like, oh, this guy thinks what he's doing is a film. This isn't a film. And I think that attitude is really lame because, it's just, shooting down what somebody's doing. And I completely agree with you. Like, all this stuff is filmmaking. And I apologize if calling them sketches earlier was offensive at all.
No.
Yeah, the first time I think I really was introduced to that idea was I was watching Every Frame a Painting video essay about Chuck Jones, who, did a lot of really famous Looney Tunes. And the essayist Tony Zhao, he referred to Chuck Jones's Looney Tunes episodes as some of the greatest films ever created. And I remember thinking like, oh, well, of course I really, really like cartoons, and in my head, I never really thought of, an 11-minute cartoon as a short film, but, that's totally what it is. And then Bo Burnham, who, directed his movie Eighth Grade and got distributed by A24, I was listening to him in an interview, and the interviewer was saying, you're the most successful YouTuber of all time because you left YouTube and went on to make a feature film that's in movie theaters. And he said, I don't agree with that at all, because there's a lot of people on YouTube right now that people care a lot more about than me. And he was saying the same thing, where people are very quick to label things and kind of create like a tier ranking of legitimacy with art, and he was saying there's people putting out YouTube videos every week that get million more eyes on it than anybody will ever watch my movie, so they seem a bit more successful to me. They're filmmaking too, just in a a different way. So I think that sentiment's really beautiful, because I agree that people want to be artists, and I think that art is kind of put on a pedestal a little bit in our society, where people think that the artists they see were born that way, and they think, oh, well, I'm not an artist, so I'll never be one. And I'm a firm believer that everybody should draw, because drawing's just a fun way to spend time, and it will show you, hey, I can make something from nothing, even if it's a little wonky looking.
Yeah. So I was actually I only listened to one episode of your podcast, and it was the one about your mother's passing.
Oh.
And
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and it was really beautiful, and I'm really sorry to hear about that. And as you know, my dad passed away from cancer. Mm-hmm. And you said a lot of things, and maybe we could go into our parents a little, but you said a lot of things about art, and that really resonated with me. And the big one was that idea that everyone wants to create, we're just discouraged by society, and society sounds like the Joker meme, but
yeah,
it's
no,
very
go
true.
Ahead, yeah.
It's very true that, like, this idea of there's creative people, and people go, I'm not a creative person, I'm not an artist. It's like, have you tried? It's like, because your hands can draw too, your hands, your voice can sing too. It doesn't have to be good right away. Like, the people who are creators that, like, are good, like most people, I'm sure there's some people that just have natural talent, and they're like singing opera at the age of 3 or something. But, most people just practiced. And I think too many people are just so bogged down by the things they feel they need to do, and like they got a job they hate, and they come home and they're exhausted. And another thing you touched upon was how supportive your parents were of your art, and I'm very similar in that I've known I wanted to make film since I was 8, and there was never a doubt by like my mom or my dad or even my stepdad that I should go like to film school and pursue this thing. And after film school, I was just kind of bumming around doing YouTube. I had a very lucky situation where I had an apartment to stay in, so I could live off of like pennies, like just pocket change. But I'm incredibly fortunate for that. But I think a lot of people I see are lacking that encouraging support system from a young age. And the friends I went to film school with who graduated and stopped making stuff, there is a very consistent thing where their parents were always kind of telling them to get a practical career and kind of writing them about loans, and it's like kind of guilt tripping them about the whole experience.
Yeah.
And I don't think that support system could be underrated. And I just think it's up to us as artists to look at the people around us and offer them a new support system, or offer them, because it's never too late, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree, and thank you for taking the time to listen to that episode. It was obviously the most personal one I've done so far, and when I was watching your movie and the details of your father came up, I felt very close to it, and I thought we could probably have a good conversation about that topic, but I also didn't really know how to broach it. But
Yeah.
yeah, my father's still around, and he's a bronze sculptor, and he has art pieces all around Arizona where I am. And my mom was a photographer, and they both, when I was a kid, encouraged us to draw when we were bored a lot. So that was kind of where I would just be making something from nothing all the time, and then that led to me learning Photoshop, which was sort of an extension of drawing. And I watched a lot of TV shows, a good amount of movies. So by the time it was time to go to college, and they're like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I think make movies, because everything else sounds not as just a good use of my time, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree, having that support system, I'll never know what it would be like to not have that. I can only look at my friends and listen to their stories of their parents being concerned about what they're doing. But I have friends where I've, tried to give them the pep talk of, you can be an artist even if it's not for your career. I have one friend where she's had very regular desk jobs her whole life, but when we've hung out before, I've sort of showed her how to use DaVinci Resolve color grading software, and she took to the ideas of, shadows and highlights and midtones really quickly, and, she was playing around with it, and she thought, oh, this is fun. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like a video game in a different sense. You're just having fun on the computer, just instead of having a new high score, you have something that you're proud of, I suppose. Yeah, I'm not totally sure where to go from there, but
I think what I could say is that I did another film in 2017 called 31 Days in Marshall, North Carolina. And have you seen that one?
No, I've seen Pretend That You Love Me. I've seen the first act of Island, and I watched the intro to I Want to Be Famous, which is very funny.
Yeah. All right, good. So 31 Days is my friend Dylan and I, who's appeared in some of the shorts over the last couple months. Him and I went down to a town in North Carolina that we'd never been to, and we didn't know anyone there. My cousin's friend offered us a trailer to stay in, and we just spent 31 days there, and we made a movie with the strangers in the town. And it was like, none of these people have acted. None of these people have been in films before. And everyone did a fantastic job and had so much fun. And we came back a year later and screened it at like the local country music hall. Like, they have a little like place that there's a jam every week. And we screened it there. And, the people in the movie like felt like stars. It was so exciting.
Yeah.
And we found out that numerous people from the film went on to act in other stuff or pursue creative stuff because we planted that bug. And I don't want to act like we did, so, it was all us.
Sure.
I think it was in the people to begin with. But I think some people need just to be shown that it's like what you said with your friend. It's like, you can work a job, and yes, it's hard to push through the exhaustion and the I hate my life that a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
The general malaise. And it's hard to push through that, but I think if you make yourself make something, or a friend helps you make something, it makes it a lot easier to make the next thing. And then that is a escalation that would happen organically with most people.
Yeah.
If
I completely agree. That I think that's really great that you did that with the people in that town. How did you go about getting them involved? Would you just walk up to strangers or knock on doors, or what were you doing?
We had a lot of methods. There was connections. My cousin's friend knew some people, and he pointed us in the right direction. But it was everywhere. Like, there was a big pizza party. They have an annual pizza party. They have this guy, Paul Gerwitz, who plays Oz in the movie. He's great. He's got a great voice.
Yeah.
But he has an annual pizza party where he has these homemade pizza ovens in his yard, and he just like has the whole town over for pizza. It's a small town. It's like 800 people. But like,
Yeah.
you know, there was like 100 people at this party. And that was the first day we got there. So we were essentially just talking to everyone. And we met a good number of the people who wound up being in the movie that day. And
Yeah.
and from there, it was like it was just a really cool town. They have like artists, like they have an old high school on an island that was converted into artist studios. So a bunch of artists work out of there. So we'd go there and meet artists. There was open mics, and we'd like talk to musicians. There's a lot of music in the film, and we would just say like, "Hey, you want to play music in the movie?" And like the whole movie all the soundtrack is comprised of just local musicians. And
That's incredible. That's really, yeah.
and it, there were people who said no. There were people, mostly older people, you know, people who I think some people, I don't want to, the darkest way to say it would be they're beyond saving, which is not true. But
Yeah.
people who are like 60 or so, 60 or 70 or something are like, I just do what I do. I don't need to do this, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But so there were people who said no, but most people were excited about the idea. You know, there were some people who couldn't make it work for schedule purposes, but we filmed the whole thing on a VHS camera too, which I think was a really smart choice, because if you bring, I mean, the Blackmagic Pocket is pretty unassuming, and I don't think it would freak people out, but in the situation where if you were to start setting up lights and having a big camera and having a boom operator, like a designated boom operator, and you know, there would have been a lot, the people would be a lot less themselves on camera, because they would feel like, oh geez, I'm part of something big, rather than just I'm part of like a home movie. And
Yeah.
that was the vibe we created. And I think if if you meet people halfway like that, and I love VHS, so it wasn't even a sacrifice for me. But it was also one of my earlier features, so I think shooting on VHS was smart, because I wasn't very good at like sound and stuff, and that's very forgiving. VHS is forgiving because of the poor quality.
Yeah.
You could get away with poor sound and poor this and that, but I think if you meet people halfway who might be hesitant to create, or they just haven't done it before, and you ease them into it, that there is a very accessible way. Almost anyone would say yes, you know.
Yeah.
Even the people who said no, I think if they were there the day of a shoot and they saw how easy it was, they probably would have been like, hey, let me get a line, you know.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think anytime you're in public, it's definitely the boom pole that kind of blows your cover, because you know, everybody has a camera of some kind, so you know, even if you have like a nice lens, they think, okay, this guy's a photographer. But if you have a guy walking around with headphones and all these cables and shit, that's when people start wondering if you have permits, or like what the heck is going on.
yeah.
Yeah. And you know, you're talking about not doing any lighting earlier. I have a weird relationship with lighting where you know, when I'm watching a movie that has really beautiful lighting, I think, geez, that's really elevating the shot. I should probably learn this a bit. But so I own some, but for the most part, I really enjoy window light. And you know, if you just have like a reflector or something and some nice light coming in through a window, and you just make sure you shoot at the right time of day, you can get away with not doing too much. But anytime I'm doing like green screen work, that's when I typically set up some lights just to make sure that I can, you know, key it out properly. And sometimes I'll be getting set up early, so I'll go be my own stand-in, and I feel just the heat of the lights hitting me in the face, and I realize like, man, I'm asking all these other people to do this, and you know, for me it's uncomfortable for just a minute, and it just reminds me that, you know, a lot of my time is spent, you know, having other people in front of a camera do what I tell them to do, and then, you know, it well you're more used to it because you're your own, you know, actor in just about everything you make, so that's a little bit different. But
And I think that's another really powerful tool to get people comfortable. You know, being on camera with them, being like, I'm doing this too. And I often like playing the, I don't know the word. I like playing the jerk or the guy who's a bit over the top.
Yeah.
Because then they don't feel the pressure to command the screen. They don't, because you're already doing it. So then they're just like, okay, I'm reacting to this. I react. And that it also helps that it's improv, and a lot, like, my stuff is so loose, like the people involved can say whatever they want and we'll run with it. But
yeah.
But I get what you're saying about the lights, and I think it's good you have, even if you still make them go through with it, it's good you have that hesitation, like, I'm making these people do this, right? Because, through film school, I was on numerous sets that were miserable. It was it was literally 14, 18-hour days. You show up in the morning and you leave at 4 a.m. or something, and you're like, they got like 2 scenes done. What was happening that whole time? And they have way too many people. They have like 10 crew members, and most of them are only working like 1/10 of the time, and otherwise, and it's just there's fun to be had on a set regardless, because you're creating something. At the end of the day, it's a bit more miserable if you're like a PA and you don't know the people, and because I've done a few freelance PA like gigs, and I'm like, I never want to be on a set again.
Yeah.
But
I have sorry, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's good you have that hesitation, because I think if they didn't get it from those experiences, there was a lot of people from film school that seemed almost oblivious to how they were wasting people's time.
Yeah, completely. There was one instance where I was on a film set that was pretty disorganized, and it honestly started to give me a bit of an anxiety attack, because I was just thinking like, fuck, I'm in the middle of nowhere and this is going on a really long time and I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I think being considerate of people's time and making it be, ideally an enjoyable experience, that's really important. I tend to be, or at least I aim to be, empathetic towards others, and I think sometimes the double-edged sword is I can like over worry a little bit, and then I'm thinking, how can I simplify this as much as humanly possible? How can I make this person not even have to be that involved in this so I can get them out of here? And something I realize is that if somebody's agreeing to be a part of your project, whether or not they're a performer or somebody doing some sort of crew work, they're probably there because they want to be, and that it feels good to be a part of something. So I've started to try to trust the people I'm collaborating with a little bit more to be okay, to go along with whatever the plan is, and not get too worried. Like, pretty much every time, I say to somebody, oh, are the lights too hot? Do you need a break? They're usually like, oh no, I'm good. Let's power through. One thing I'll say is I have a lot of friends from film school who, now that they've graduated, they are going a little bit more the traditional route, and they're doing, very big sets with a lot of big setups. And that being said, the stuff they're making is at a very high quality, so I don't think it's, diminishing returns or a lost cause. But sometimes I struggle with asking them to help me, because I think maybe they now have a higher bar for what a set is, and like I said, I've been doing things a little bit loose and with, less setups and stuff. And then I think, like, is there even a justifiable reason to have them here if I can do this all myself, Yeah.
And once again, yeah, it is a struggle. You don't want to go too far either way. You don't want to give yourself a panic attack worrying, but there is a consideration to be had. And I think, like, those horrible sets were often, in my case, just because they overplanned. They got every light from the film department, and they spent literally 4 hours setting it up. And what you were saying about window light and natural light, I think it's less about, like, you see a movie with beautiful lighting and you're like, yes, of course that's beautiful. But I think it's less about, like, window light and available light isn't as beautiful. It's more about being able to recontextualize our ideas of beauty. And And being able to take a step back and be like, maybe imperfection is beautiful too. Not there's. I never want to say the other thing is wrong, but I think often people on the other thing say our thing is wrong, or that and maybe that's anxiety from myself talking, and it's not quite that case. But
no, I think describing it as recontextualizing what's beautiful is like a really powerful statement because like film grain, for instance, or lens flares are technically imperfections, and maybe like I know Roger Deakins is a purist and he doesn't want any of that shit because he says he wants it to look as real life as possible, but it's a lot of effort you got to go to do that, so I think I've made some videos before where it's a mix between Blackmagic footage, which looks very clean, and iPhone clips coming in as well, and those are two very different looking things. But I think like you said, like phones are a part of our life. It's a very specific way of viewing things, so I think incorporating that in modern art is important. And I think imperfections usually get very romanticized with age. When VHSs were going on, it was the highest standard, and now people have some nostalgia around the way VHS looks, so similar. I think like, okay, well, these iPhones are going to get old, so maybe one day people will be romantic about the digital noise from iPhone footage, which right now sounds a little bit silly, but I can totally see that happening.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because there was a lot of people in film school that were obsessed with like shooting on film and creating period pieces, which is like an insanely ambitious thing, and most of them couldn't really pull it off.
Yeah.
But there was this like obsession with the old, and I'm like, you realize you love that old thing because the people back in the day were creating with their modern technology. Those people were creating something honest and true to their times using the available technology. And it's like, you love it because of the honesty. Of course, you can love the aesthetic too, but like you're saying, it's like, speak to your times a little and use an iPhone, use a minimal, a camera, mini DV or something, because that's going to age the same way. And Lord knows there's going to be film students in 2030 or something, or 2040, like buying like old iPhone 7s to get the aesthetic. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then like having to use proprietary like systems to like use the files. They're like, we gotta use it's gonna happen. And I think speaking to your times and yourself and how you live is so important in any art form. And I think the desire to emulate is a great kicking off point, but most people don't take the moment to be like, why do I like this thing I'm emulating? Is it just the pretty colors, or is there something deeper?
Yeah. It's funny. I just got an iPhone 12 this last week, and prior to that, I had an iPhone 6 for about like 6 years. I didn't get a smartphone till I was 20. I got the 6, and it's worked pretty much completely fine. My friends would disagree because I'm always like having to delete shit to take new videos because I'm always running out of space. But like for the most part, it was never that bogged down, and it still has a headphone jack, which to me, I'm so mad at Apple for getting rid of headphone jacks. I think it's ludicrous. I think that Apple's game with proprietary technology and trying to force the needle to what they want, like wireless headphones, is just maddening. And when I was at the Verizon store, the guy said, "Hey man, I gotta ask, why did this take you so long? Like, why do you have this?" and I said to him, like, this is like one of the most incredible pieces of technology of all time, and it was brand new like 6 years ago. I think we should be designing things to last a little bit. I don't like the idea that the one you're selling me right now is going to be in the ocean next year. Like that's insane.
Yeah. It's funny, I'm the exact same way. I had the 6S for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then I just got the 11 Pro.
Yeah.
Which doesn't have the headphone jack, which I realized after. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe that.
Yeah.
But I was the same way. I was like, I've always wondered, like, when I got like I had like the 3GS first, and I was like in high school.
Yeah.
And like when I got the 3GS, it worked perfect. Like it was super fast. It went through the internet lightning speed, and I'm like, from phone to phone, the initial experience isn't that much different. They just
Mm-hmm.
are designed to degrade. You know, everyone. I think they even prove that like updates when the new one comes out actually like make the phone slower.
Yeah.
But I was just like, we haven't progressed that far. I feel like a 3GS, a brand new 3GS nowadays would still feel good, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think iPhones come out like shoe sizes where there's like all these like in between steps, you know, like there's a 12 mini, a 12, a 12 Pro, and a 12 Pro Max, which is basically a Pro. And fucking it's I just you know, and like they're still selling the 11 simultaneously. They're saying, "Oh, but the 11's good too." So, and
Yeah.
you know, I I'm pretty sure like Steve Jobs, I think it was maybe confirmed that he would withhold technology to delay the rollouts. Like I remember they put a video camera in the iPod Nano when it was all long, and I'm pretty sure they had the capabilities of doing that for a long time before they released it.
Yeah. I always wonder that too. I'm like, even with stuff like graphics cards and a computer, I'm like, are they really just discovering like how to create these like small increments to like finally we figured out how to do a little more power. Finally, we did it again.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how they can't just release like a beefy card from like 2025 today.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how they don't understand how to get there ahead of time. You know.
It really makes me laugh picturing like this eureka moment in the lab where they're
Yeah.
you know, NVIDIA, they're all like making the 3090s, and there's some guy in the corner like tinkering with the circuit board, and he's like, "Oh my god, we have the 3100, everybody." We have
They're
it.
like, what did you do? What was the equation?
He's like, I plugged in the red one.
Yeah.
It works now. It's getting 20 of the power drive megahertz or whatever the fuck. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I do not know what's happening with these engineers where suddenly technology is just better and more expensive. It's very confusing to me.
They're like, by God, we did it. iPhone 13. Oh, my.
I love that. It's like, you know, they're trying to. It's like fucking the guy who made the atomic bomb, but they're just like giving us marginal consumer differences.
I feel like 12 is the last one you can number. I think everything after 12 just sounds absurd. You know, like
yeah.
13, iPhone 14. Like, it
Yeah.
sounds horrible. Like, I think once you hit the teens, you almost went too far.
Well, I think Xbox figured that out because they went from Xbox 360 to the Xbox One, and now I think it's Xbox Series X, which is fucking absurd.
Yeah. Their naming is horrible.
That's why I love that Nintendo just invents a word every time they make something. Like this is the GameCube, this is the Wii. Like they're just throwing shit out there, you know.
At least you could tell it's a new thing, except for the Wii U. The Wii U, you couldn't tell.
That's the worst. That was like the worst marketing of all time. The Wii U it's such a good console in my opinion. Like it had Mario Kart 8 and a whole new Smash Brothers, and there's a whole generation of people.
Nintendo Land. I love Nintendo Land. That was fun.
Was that the one where you play as the Miis and it's kind of like Mario Party?
Yeah, there was a bunch of mini games, and there was the one where you chased the Mario, and the person with the gamepad could see all of you, but you couldn't see him. And they had some fun ideas.
Yeah.
What a tangent we've gotten on.
Oh no, I mean that's like I said, yeah. I just wanted to have a conversation with you. That's totally okay. I grew up only with Nintendo consoles. We had a PlayStation 1, but only for playing Spyro, which is essentially a Nintendo game.
I didn't have the first Xbox, but I had pretty much everything because me and my brother would share, and but it was mainly PlayStation and Nintendo stuff we would play.
I got a PlayStation 4 2 Black Fridays ago, and it came with like God of War and The Last of Us and some other really big game all for free, and I was just like, man, buy it. And everybody I knew was saying they're gonna announce the PlayStation 5 next year, you don't want to wait. And I'm like, dude, this shit is like half off plus 3 amazing games. And like, there's so many, it just goes back to the technology not getting that outdated thing. There's so many amazing, I'm like, this is fine. I don't, and that, and now nobody can even buy a PlayStation 5. It's like impossible.
I know. I think that's so funny that like we're so quick to like dismiss the things of like yesterday. You know, when there's this weird gap where it's like present day, not interesting, nostalgia,
Yeah.
And we love it. There's like 10-year maybe gap, or maybe it's not even that long. I feel like we get nostalgic quick nowadays.
It's shorter and shorter. I'm starting to wonder when people will get nostalgic around CD collections. Every now and again I see that, but like in general it's just a disc drive with MP3 files on it, and the packaging usually isn't that interesting, but I mean, people
get nostalgic over VHS, and that's like the worst. That's like the worst form to consume a movie in.
My dad literally a weekend ago had me take the box of VHSs because he's trying to clean out right now, and I have Bionicles the movie. Nice. And I really want to go to like a data place where they can like convert it to digital because I just want to have that forever. Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
I think we grew up. How old are your late 20s?
I was born in 96. I'm 24.
Oh, yeah, 96. I'm 25.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of people think I'm older. I'm not sure if you've seen the YouTube comments. I get the gray hair. I'm like gray just naturally.
My older brother's the same way. I have a little bit coming in, so I might be there soon.
But people in my comments are like, is he like 30 or 40? I'm like, no, I'm 25. But we grew up in such an interesting time because we caught the tail end of like the 90s. We caught the tail end of like, landline phones and like dial-up internet and VHS. Like we experienced all those things enough to like say enough to know what they are, and then we just moved on. Like everything else came out like, oh, good internet and good ways to watch movies.
No, I try to be easy to impress, honestly, because I think it's so easy to be like, oh fuck, my 5G isn't working or whatever the heck it is, and I'm like, this is amazing. I think I've said this a lot. I think historically speaking, our generation is going to be like one of the more interesting ones, because I think the thus far the first half of our life was pretty technologically withheld isn't the right word, but there wasn't as impressive stuff going on. You had a Game Boy Color that you had to, if it was nighttime, you couldn't play it because it didn't even have a backlight. And now we have like flat screen TVs in our pocket all the time. So the curve is crazy. And I always think about how anyone our age who has kids, their grandkids are going to be like, oh, my grandparents were born in the 1900s and they had dial-up internet and fax machines and VHSs. Like we're going to seem we're going to seem like boomers, Yeah.
It is so weird to think about how you're inevitably going to become the out-of-date people, and that was another thing I really latched onto that you said about your mom, is that you said she didn't choose to become that curmudgeon, or she didn't choose to become that, oh, I don't understand that's for the kids, And I think it's important. That was interesting to hear because I never considered that, because that is a choice. It is a choice to just like let yourself get lost to the times and just latch on to the past, and not, because like there's a lot of those people in our parents' generation and grandparents especially that don't even try. It's like it's like you hand them a computer, they're like, how does this work? It's like, we didn't have a tutorial, we just started clicking around and we figured, I can't pinpoint the time when I like knew how to like open up the internet or do this or that. And obviously if you're young and you grow up with it, there's a much more logical learning curve.
Yeah.
But but I think that it is a choice, and it was a really beautiful thing you said, because I think when you were talking about like the music she listens to, and how you know, how she was always involved with like the things that you were involved with,
Yeah.
and not in a way that was like humoring you, but in a way that she was actually
Yeah.
compelled by them. And my dad was similar. He was my best friend, and he wasn't, he didn't understand technology. He wouldn't listen to rap music or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he did allow his humor and stuff like that to stay, present.
Yeah.
He was always on the cutting edge of like, how people talked, and and ready to associate with anyone and meet them at their, whatever. I don't want to say level, because I don't think it's above or below. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
just linear. But he was somebody who did not let himself become that old man.
Yeah, yeah. I have a really distinct memory of senior year of high school, driving to school, and the last thing my dad said to me before I got out of the car in 2013, he said, I think my favorite song on Yeezus is "I Am a God." And I was just like, "Me too, Dad. Me too. Have a good day." My dad, he's a little bit less of a technology guy. He's not a big fan of it, just because it's a little bit confusing, and you, like you said, you have to put in a direct effort to understand it. But that being said, as far as art goes, I think he's pretty hip with music. But he was always the sort of guy who he's really into like the old like black and white like King Kong movies with the puppets, and he really likes Three Stooges. So I think I got a good dose of like old like respecting like kind of old like cruder, grungier things, as well as being able to progress forward with my parents. I think it's really beautiful to hear the sort of relationship you had with your father. I know he was involved in a number of your films, and I watched the one where it was I think it's titled something along the lines of "When You from Your Future Self Visits You," and it's him in the park.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. And it seems like he was just totally willing to go forward with whatever the joke premise was, and really just commit.
Yeah, and half the time he'd come up with it. That was really the joy of it, that we were always, collaborators. And I try to treat everyone like a collaborator rather than someone who is helping me with my thing. And I think that's important. But him more than anyone else, he was always saying it was like our channel, and he's like, subscribe to our YouTube, and he was like awesome, and he was willing to just go with anything. And there's a funny thing, because he's such a funny guy, and he was such an outgoing guy, but I once again relate it back to, I think anybody can be under the right circumstances, because he also, you can't tell from the films, but he would stumble at every 4 out of every 5 takes. He would mess up the words, and he'd say the wrong thing. And I don't have scripts, but I mean just like getting the words out. But like you don't notice that in the film, and I think if you just show people that like we're all like editing ourselves every day, and the most talented artist you see online is putting forth their best moments and their best, and I try to not be quite so censored. I try to put some of my more like vulnerable, and I try to be imperfect, as I said. I try to, not worry. Like there's some scenes in Pretend That You Love Me where the audio got messed up, and I'm like, it's a real scene that happened, or it's like I didn't do nothing in Pretend That You Love Me had 2 takes. Everything was just whatever happened the first take.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't go back and change that, because that's betraying that truth of the project. And so it's like, if you could push past that, like, the audio's bad, I gotta dub the whole thing, or the focus was off, gotta reshoot the whole thing. And it's like, instead just look past that and be like, is the emotion of what I captured good?
Mm-hmm.
Then let's run with it. And I guess relating it back to my dad, it's that at the end of the day, they were always just films about there were specific concepts, but at the end of the day, there is this feeling. Oh, it's just a dad and his son goofing around, you
Yeah.
know, and don't do anything to betray that underlying feeling, you know,
Yeah.
and and more times than not, you know, it was just him and I just grabbing a camera and making it up, and that's how it's been with everyone, and I think that's why I try to. I have a lot of things I do to like, you know, keep it loose. But the one thing I like is I love leaving outtakes in the edit, like not even putting
Yeah.
them at the end,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're not like I'm not trying to sell you on a world in my shorts. You know, I'm not trying to convince you of some beautiful filmic reality.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to. There's a fine line between there is some realness to what is presented and there's some realness to how it was made,
Yeah.
and there's an intersection there, and that's people having a good time and creating and speaking to something honestly or in a funny way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the keeping the outtakes in the video. Really quick, I just want to say this regarding the last topic. In terms of letting yourself get old and being a curmudgeon, I always think about there's this scene in Judd Apatow's movie This Is 40 where Paul Rudd's character is like a record label guy trying to sign artists, and he's like supposed to be the guy who let himself uh, be behind the times, and one of his employees is yelling at him and he's like, you turned down Arcade Fire, and he said there's 40 of them. I didn't know that people would like this sort of thing. And I remember Judd Apatow just he was saying, yeah, it's a conscious choice. He said there's a lot of guys who just decide at a certain age, okay, I've heard all the music I like and the new music isn't music anymore, and it's kind of a conscious decision. So I think about that a lot. I try to be open-minded to things. With you and your movies outtakes, I think I was most cognizant of it when I was watching a Smash and Bash Job Done Wrong, where you were making the improvising the movie rather than watching the Oscars, and so you were saying your movies aren't really trying to sell you on like a world per se. I think for me as an audience members, it has this effect on me where I feel like I'm an audience to two simultaneous simulated worlds where so if I'm watching a movie like Island, for instance, and you are using very DIY tactics to sell me on the idea that you're on this deserted island, I think that your commitment to the concept is so strong that my brain kind of starts to play pretend like I'm a kid, where I'm completely ignoring the fact that it's done very DIY, and I'm taking it for what it is. I'm taking what you're selling me, and I'm saying, okay, this guy's on an island right now, and I present that as real. So with a Smash and Bash gone wrong, I'm totally taking it seriously. I'm totally thinking, okay, there was a crime committed. This guy's calling up his employees. But the parts where it weaves in and out and your friends start cracking up and laughing and it kind of breaks for a second, then the other part of my audience brain, it feels like I'm watching a group of friends have fun and a group of people create something, and I'm able to kind of have those two viewership experiences at the same time, where I'm kind of weaving out of like realities, I guess is a way to say it. And I think it creates a very happy kind of viewing experience where it just kind of makes me smile, and it reminds me of like when you're a kid and people are just playing pretend, or even maybe without a camera, and you're just kind of committing to a bit or like a game, but so it's but then once you guys get back to business and you re-enter the scene, I'm back in it because the drama is so high. I got to be committed to what's going on in the story as well, besides just watching you guys make it.
Yeah, I'm so happy with that because it was this insane idea, because every year I've done like a Oscars stream, like instead of watching the Oscars so and so, I've done it for 4 years now.
Yeah.
And this one was the crazy one. I'm like, I have an audience now, so what can I do with them? And I'm like, let's make a movie with them, you know? And
Yeah.
everyone who calls in is just random people from my YouTube audience.
Okay.
So, I don't, and maybe that's even a greater testament to people's want to create and be a part of something, because these people, like, on a Sunday night, they just called into this thing and were just thrown into scenes. You know, I gave them like a quick setup. Like the whole making of stream is live, so you can watch the whole movie get made in 3.5 hours or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was the. You know, I've always wanted to shoot a feature in a day, and then like doing it in like 3.5 hours is hilarious. And
Yeah.
like doing this like insanely over the top, stupid police procedural with random people acting as characters on screens is like such a funny thing to set against the Oscars, because the Oscars takes themselves so seriously. It's like everything there is like trying to be the perfect version of itself. And then you have this thing that is just this messy, hilarious, weird, like you said, dual experience where it's trying to tell a story, but at times failing because like we are in disbelief of where the story's going, you know.
Yeah. I try to laugh away from the microphone because I tend to completely ruin the audio, but it's all really funny. I noticed that you did all the other, doing this instead of watching the Oscars. I thought the one where you were just calling people you love and telling them you love them is really beautiful. I get a sense of just very of genuine sincerity from you, which I think the world needs a lot more of. I was wondering, did you start? I think I know the answer, but did you start the series just kind of almost in a little bit of protest of like an award show, or like it taking itself too seriously? Like where does your disdain for the Oscars come from?
That's a loaded question, because the first one was actually part of I'm Going to Be Famous.
Okay.
Instead of watching the Oscars, watch me take a bubble bath. It was part of the performance art plot line in that. And I don't know. I think my friend Max and my friend Calvin and I have handled them. I think it was Max and me at first, and then Max and Calvin, and throughout those 4 years. So I think the first one, instead of watching the Oscars, watch me take a bubble bath. We didn't have a point, but looking back on it, I guess the point was that the Oscars are just as much worth watching as a guy taking a bubble bath.
Sure.
Which is kind of surface level. And then we kind of repeated ourselves. It was, instead of watching the Oscars, watch me eat 2 Domino's pizzas or something. And that one was very abstract and weird, but it really amounted to the same point.
Yeah.
That like Oscars dumb, this dumb, you know.
Yeah.
And then finally the third year I had that phone call on, instead of watching the Oscars, watch me call people I love and tell them I loved them. And that was when I had this moment like, okay, we can't just say the Oscars dumb every year, you know.
Yeah.
We have to have, and then that idea, and I have one regret with that, and it's partially, you know, because I had a friend get upset that their voice was on it.
Okay.
But I tried to prompt most people, but some people, a conversation just happened organically.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish you couldn't hear the voices, because the real point of that stream wasn't watch me call people. It was, here's something you could do productive in your life right now instead of the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was, everyone has dozens of people in their lives, many of which they might have not talked to for months or years, that they can easily call right now and just say something nice to, you know.
Yeah.
And how much that can mean for someone. You don't know how hard of a time somebody's having. And I only wish I left the audio of their end of the call off, just so it was less about listening to these calls and more about just the act itself. And then this year was obviously just the absurdity of making an entire movie during a night when a bunch of rich people are celebrating movies.
Yeah.
No, sorry. And that was that was just to show you can make a movie. You can
Yeah.
make a movie.
Yeah.
Right now in 3 hours, and who cares what it is? It's a movie because it's 40 minutes. That's the Oscars uh, official length for feature length. It's
Yeah.
40 plus minutes. So it's just
Yeah, that no, I think that's a great evolution from saying, Oscar's dumb to, here's, a beautiful thing you could do instead of Oscar's dumb. And then, why don't we be creative in lieu of this Oscar season? Last year I was thinking the Oscars would be really weird because, way less stuff came out in 2020 just because, theaters weren't open so much. And I was thinking like, oh, is Margot Robbie gonna get nominated for being Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey? Like, what's the bar gonna be this year? And something I don't know how familiar you are with it, but the movie that won Best Picture, Nomadland. Have you seen that or looked into
no.
it too much?
I've heard opinions from both sides, people who love it and people who have reservations about it.
I think it was made very similarly to how your North Carolina movie was made because the director Chloe Zhao, she kind of largely does not script things and she uses everyday people that she comes across in her travels. Mm-hmm. So I went and saw it, and it was the first time I've ever seen a movie in a theater where I was the only person in the room, which was and it was a good movie to do that because it's kind of so like the lead actress Frances McDormand, she's pretty much the one famous person in there, and I think she blends in as a civilian, for lack of better words, really well, and it's a very isolating movie because basically she's a nomad, she's living out of a van, going across the country, and that's just how she lives, but from stop to stop she comes across really just, I don't even know if I want to say interesting. It's not that they're not, but, they're just ordinary people. There's not anything, they're just people. And through that, there's a lot of really nice conversations and relationships developed. And from what I read, the director kind of tries to not script things, very loosely create scene setups and, just use people who are around. And it just makes me so happy that a movie like that is getting celebrated in that way and that it won Best Picture because I try not to put too much stock into like the awards themselves, but I'm aware that there is sort of this cultural like legitimacy that happens where legacy media, whether or not it's the news or whatever it is, it's kind of like they're putting their stamp of approval on what, people are supposed to like or what is art, so I it makes me happy that something made so loosely got the highest acclaim, so yeah.
To me it's a double-edged sword because there was a similar sentiment around Parasite winning. It was like, thank God a foreign film took home Best Picture, and I think the Oscars doing that almost sent the wrong message. And maybe it signals to a change in how they'll handle things, though I don't think that was the case this year. But, they've always kept foreign films separate in a separate category. And then suddenly they're allowed to win Best Picture.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like, I think the message it sends is like, finally they made a foreign film worth watching. Like that, or they finally made a foreign film that's better or can compete with American like movies. And I don't think that was their intention. They weren't out to do that, but I think that's what less inquisitive or less curious audiences would take away from that. Like, let's watch Parasite, and that was the best. I love that, but I don't think many people would take the next step to explore foreign film.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of the best movies ever are foreign films, and you just I'd love if it was a step forward to the Oscars, just getting rid of the foreign category and just looking at world cinema as a whole as what came out, because it's such a strange system that it's like each country gets to support send in one movie or something to be nominated, and it's just like, what if like Japan made like 5 of the best movies one year, and only one is represented. I think that happened one year with like, I think it was Shoplifters
Yeah,
and
I
something
love
else.
that movie. I think it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, that came out, and there was something else from the same country that just like was also Burning. I haven't seen
Oh,
Burning.
I've heard it. I've heard it's great.
Was that the same country? I don't want to mix it up, but
I
I think that might have been the double one year where
Okay.
like people felt like they both should have been nominated, and they weren't.
Sure. Yeah, I completely get what you're saying. I'll admit I actually have not heard that sentiment before where people are saying, "Oh, a foreign country finally made a movie worth watching." I understand where that worry comes from though, for sure. I'll say for me, I felt really optimistic isn't the right word, but it made me really happy with what happened with Parasite, just in the sense that most of the people I knew who were going to go see it saw it before the Oscars, and I think the reason I saw a big influx of people rushing to go see that movie is because the plot of that movie is really, it takes unexpected twists and turns, and the name doesn't even really tell you what it's about. It's almost even kind of a mislead. And for me, at least, when I saw Parasite, I was really blown away. And anytime I see some art I really like, I try to tell people, you got to go look at this. And when I was telling people to watch Parasite, I was telling them, trust me, it's really good. And I can't tell you anything of what it's about because it would kind of defeat the entire purpose of seeing it. And I think that in this day and age, when people are a little bit more suspicious of how they want to spend their time and whether or not they want to trust the opinions of others, I thought it was really encouraging to see a lot of people coming away with the same experience, where I would talk to people and they say, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I had such a great time watching it. So in a way, I had a bit of an encouraging view on that season, just because the specific movie at hand, whether or not it was Korean, I just saw a lot of people being kind of surprised with what they were watching. I saw it a second time in theaters with a friend, and he hadn't seen it yet. And when one of the twists was happening, he kind of grabbed my arm and he's like, "What's going on?" And but I actually was not aware that countries are only allowed to send in one film. That sounds really ludicrous, because like you're saying, like one film, that means you got to pick one genre also. What if what if Korea made the best comedy of the year, but they have this drama, so the comedy gets, yeah.
And I guess it's obvious I wasn't being that literal that people are literally saying that. But and I think if you run in like if a lot of your friends are filmmakers, or even if you're a filmmaker and you've shown your friends a lot of stuff over the years, they might be more inclined to explore further. But I just wasn't seeing that around Parasite, people taking that next step, because I wasn't somebody who was as enamored with Parasite as most. I thought it was an incredibly solid, good time. I was never bored, but I wasn't like stoked to watch it again. And to me, there's just so many great foreign films that have not even like inaccessible, not like dreary Bergman, not like, I'm talking like just like totally balls to the walls, fun, accessible foreign films that wouldn't get the same patience from as many people as Parasite, because there isn't this mainstream appeal and mainstream success behind
Sure.
it. And I guess that Parasite winning does not affect or change that. It signaled to that problem for me in a way that annoyed me, that I don't think many people would like take your suggestion to go see a movie if it wasn't currently doing really well in theaters and currently, having a lot of hype online about it,
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes complete sense. And I actually have a friend, Christian, who's a really amazing filmmaker, and he And I think he kind of follows some of the same principles we've talked about today. Like he uses a digital Bolex camera, which is a really weirdly specific camera. And it only shoots up to 1080p, but he's like, I don't really fucking care if this is 4K. I like how this camera looks, you know? And last year he watched 1 to 3 films every day. So he watched like 530 movies last year. And I remember talking to him about Parasite, and he was saying something similar where he liked it, but he wasn't really, rating or ranking it tremendously high because he thought that there was a little bit of a, like, I don't know if I want to say fetishization, but he was saying just, foreign films are incredible, and this is by no means the most amazing one he had seen. So he was saying, I liked it, but I don't know if I want to say it's 5 out of 5 stars because to him he had seen so many other impressive things that nobody has even heard about. I really like seeing what the action movies coming out of Bollywood and India are, because some of the stunts and the effects like make the stuff that we do over here look so uninspired. Like they're doing the most insane things that executives over here would be like, what do you mean you want to make a human wrecking ball out of 80 guys who are all clones of each other with machine guns coming out of their mouth?
I know, it's so, you see something like that and then you look at like how grounded most like superhero movies try to be. Like even Marvel movies, which take themselves less seriously, still try to be pretty grounded visually, and you just see something like that and you're like, why are they not having fun with this stuff?
Right.
And there's some scattered examples. Like I think the Guardians of the Galaxy movies have some fun shots, and they're probably the most expressive of any Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And I think there's just this bewilderment for me looking at, like, you had like how many $1 million and you did this. Like, also this is just totally my own thing, but I find it so ridiculous that we've all agreed $1 million is a logical amount to spend on a movie. We're like yeah, more money than anyone will ever have in their life. Yeah. That makes sense to make a piece of art. You know?
Well, those are like $100 million.
I know, they're 100.
What $1 million? Like I remember in film school, a teacher would say this movie looks extremely cheap. It was probably only $1 million. And I was just like, come on.
The people who are like, yeah, wow, that was only $1 million. It looks great. It's like, what do you mean only? You've never seen $1 million in your life, and you're never gonna see $1 million. It's like any amount, and that's why like my movie, like Pretend That You Love Me, cost me $0, and that to me is just like, I'm like, yes, it's not. It doesn't have this lighting. It doesn't have this sheen of professionalism and polish. But it's just like, you don't go into that movie like, God, how much did this cost? You don't go, cost isn't even in the equation. And it's just so uninteresting to me and so discouraging to me to be like, oh yeah, 100,000, that's a small budget. Like even that is ridiculous, and that is a small budget to most people. Like $100,000. When are you ever gonna have that free to spend on a movie?
I remember in film school back in like 2014, which for me at least, that's one of my favorite years of the decade for movies that came out. I remember my teacher said, I just went and saw Whiplash, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really good testament to making a good story cheaply. He said, when I was watching Whiplash, I thought you could probably make this for $70,000, and that's dirt cheap. And yeah, 70 grand, that's like 2-year salary for a lot of people, for some people 5-year salary, and it's in the context of movies that is considered one of the cheapest things you can do.
But he does have a good point, because Whiplash I assume cost a couple million, maybe.
I can look it up, honestly, but
he does have a good point. A lot of that movie is very contained and insular.
Yeah.
There's the only things that would, and even then you could know somebody who has an auditorium or something. And you could shoot it so you don't need an actual audience.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of that is just conversations, just this and that in a band room and in a home. And there is a $0 version of Whiplash out there.
For
It
sure.
might have to cut some scenes or have stuff occur off camera, but and it's just so funny to me that like there might be people who I might have just actually listened to a podcast where they talked about Whiplash and they went, "Wow, that was only so and so," and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Only?" I was like, I just think we've like blown film to such an impossible expensive high,
Yeah.
and it needs to be brought back down, and I think YouTube is the strongest force to bring it back down.
One of my favorite examples is Napoleon Dynamite's budget was $400,000 and it box officed $46 million. So like the ratio, and again, 400 grand, like that's a lot of money. But you know the ratio of making a movie for less than half a million and then making 46 back. That's and that movie's so simple. The $0 version of Napoleon Dynamite could exist, as well for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears here just because I want to be mindful of your time. And there's one thing I feel like I have to talk to you about, which is all the animation that you do.
Oh yeah.
Last week you told me that you were animating for 14 hours straight one day. So for which I completely anticipated, because animation is so much more complicated than most people think, and even with you using the software that you use, Ebsynth. And so when you're putting out an animated film, I think your most recent one was I've come here for the truth, or
Yeah.
So when you say you were doing a 14-hour animation day, is it like 10 days like that for one of those shorts, or what's the grand total here?
No, it's not 10. It'll be so I've gotten really efficient. The first 6 or 7 I did, I was on a mouse and keyboard, and that wasn't because like I didn't want a drawing pad. It's because I had $20 in my bank account, and I had a mouse and keyboard, and I had these ideas I wanted to execute,
Mm-hmm.
and since then I've gotten a drawing tablet once the channel blew up and I'm like, oh, I'm actually earning some living off of this. I got a drawing tablet and I've probably doubled the efficiency at which I can make them. And even then, that most recent one took me 30 hours, which is incredible for an animation. Like pumping out a 2 to 3 minute animation in 30 hours is way better than frame by frame or
Yeah.
traditional rotoscoping would yield. But it's not far off from what any animator, because a lot of animators on YouTube use a very simplified style.
Yeah.
And I think it's not far off from that amount of time that you would any other style. And so animation is almost impractical on YouTube unless you're a lunatic like me who puts in the time. And that's why I do live action, not only because I love live action, and I think live action speaks to the heart of my work even better. I think the live action gets across these people having fun and goofing around
Mm-hmm.
in a way that the animation almost puts a mask over, even though my animations are shot the exact same way. They're also improvised also. But that yeah, animation on YouTube, it's like unless you go super simple, you're gonna have to put in some 40-hour weeks
Yeah.
on the animation alone, and that's not even considering filming other stuff, managing the channel, responding to messages. That's 40 hours of animating, and it was the second RPG one the third RPG one that I put in a 70-hour week into that.
Okay.
And that might have been 5 or 6 10-hour days in a row at least. And
Is the majority of the time coming from having the Ebsynth software have errors and then having to go in and make new frames more than you expected, or is it just the design of the backgrounds?
it's the Ebsynth, I've gotten to a point where it does pretty well what I want. There are times where you move enough that you're like, okay, this shot's gonna take me 4 or 5 drawings, and that's okay. But it's mostly just tracing. Each time you create a frame of a character, you're looking at anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes of tracing and coloring.
Mm-hmm.
And then you multiply that by 100 because, you make 100 usually for like especially a longer video. I'm working on one now that I don't want to give anything away, but I'm a lunatic because it's going to be like a 10-minute animation.
Yeah.
And it's going to be worth it for the payoff, but it's going to,
yeah.
That's what I was working on this week, and I just was doing it before we called as well.
Okay. It's good to hear that reference point. I'm working on an Ebsynth music video for an artist, which I'm really excited about. The majority of the filmmaking I've done since I finished film school has actually been music videos, just because there's a lot of really good musicians in the area, and it to me, kind of like you were saying earlier about getting freed from scripts and kind of tight constraints. With the music video, I can kind of experiment with visual creativity and not have to justify any of it. Nobody's really asking, why is this happening? And I think especially in hip hop, I've noticed this huge desire for cartoons. There's a lot of rappers with like cartoon versions of themselves as album covers, and I see like CGI videos sometimes made in Blender, but in terms of getting the classic like 2D cartoon look, that's something where you're either going to put a lot of time in it or it's going to look really cheap, and maybe cheap in a little bit less endearing of a way. And this artist where I'm going to be doing the Ebsynth video with, 3 years ago I had failed and gave up on doing a frame by frame music video because I was completely delusional that I could draw a few thousand drawings in Photoshop's timeline editor, So when I found out about the Ebsynth software where you could just film stuff and then convert it into a new look, like a cartoon, I think it's a really amazing tool, and I'm really excited to make something in that style. And it's good to hear from you kind of a breakdown of like, how many hours go into it, because, it sounds like a lot, but I don't think it's an unreasonable thing,
No, it lends it. It's such a good tool, and I love it because yes, you do have to put in a whole work week to get like a 2-minute, 3-minute animation, but that is pretty unheard of as far as the quality is concerned, because it's essentially 2D motion capture. That's how I've described it in the past. And you result to have a fully moving facial acted animation in a week that conveys a story in a world is pretty new. That's something that Ebsynth has allowed. And I just drew a blank. I want people to like. I put the tutorial out on my channel, how I animated this video, and I wanted it to be part entertainment, part informative enough to like give people that like go and do it,
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot, like there's so many people doing it now, and the Ebsynth. I don't know if it's actually called Ebsynth, but I can
really?
call it Ebsynth.
Okay, well,
I call it Ebsynth. Some
Yeah.
people I've heard call it the other thing. But the Ebsynth team reached out to me, and they sent me a graph of their downloads. And it was like, it went from it was like 200 times on a spike
Wow.
the day I did that video.
Yeah.
And then you see the results of that on YouTube. There's dozens, if not hundreds of people doing the Joel Haver style.
Yeah,
is what
I've seen
the
that
meme
around lately.
yeah, the meme has become. But and like that is just one example of how you could show people, here's something. I bet you never considered you could do animation. Well, here's this,
Yeah.
or I bet you've tried animation, hated it. Here's another try to not hate it,
I found out about Ebsynth a few years ago because Corridor Digital is really good at kind of talking about new creative solutions a little bit earlier than a lot of people. And I remember thinking, this is incredible. I got to make something with this. And I literally forgot it existed and just never made anything. And I'm pretty sure I had seen some of your sketches before. And, I was like, okay, this guy's doing cool stuff. And my buddy wound up sending me your tutorial, and that's what sent me down the rabbit hole of your channel. And I realized, like, oh, I already like this guy's stuff, and I thought it was really great that you were willing to kind of put out your process in full and make it not only just an explanation of how you make stuff, but a little bit of a step by step, because I think the more information and education is free of charge, the more we'll just have good ideas out there in the world, and that people are very, clenching of, these proprietary ideas, and I drew a little bit of a blank too, but I've just wanted to say to you, like, I'm glad you made that tutorial video. I was hanging out with my musician friend who we're going to do the music video for, and I actually had him watch that with me because I wanted him to be aware of how we were going to make what we were going to, because, musicians and video makers, our processes are very different, and it can be kind of mysterious to each other. And I kind of believe in having transparency so that they have a more firm mental picture of what I got to do to get something done in a certain period of time, so then that way I'm not just telling them 70 hours of work and they have no idea what that means. And I remember we were watching your tutorial, and it gets to the point where it kind of breaks the fourth wall, and like the video we're watching is inside the video. And I remember he turns to me and he just says, "How is this possible?" He said, "How does this exist?"
Yeah, I wanted it to be a little weird, like, wait, how did this happen? And
yeah.
I'm glad people have latched onto that video, because I saw Ebsynth, like, I've been doing them since 2019. I did like three, maybe four before the RPG one, and I put in all the work and they just never took off. So I was like, these aren't worth it, until the RPG one. I'm like, oh, maybe they are worth it. But I saw it in like 2019, and I did a music video for my own song with it. That was the first thing I did with Ebsynth, and then I did the Galactic Emperor, and then I did some of that. And I'm kind of shocked because I didn't see, like, I saw people running tests with it, like animating over existing stuff, trying to give it like a new style. But I didn't see anyone creating like original content with it and just filming themselves live action and creating animations. And I didn't think I was doing anything that crazy, but it was the tutorial video and I guess the explosion of the RPG that I was like, sometimes people just need to be shown that these tools are out there, and here's a applicable use for them that you can do today, because I think when Ebsynth came out, it was very technical. If you watch their tutorials, just like create a visual style over your video, and it doesn't go further than that. It doesn't show you something fun you can do with it. And I think we need more creative tutorials out there. We need information presented in a way that conveys the output of what you're gonna do. And I think that was where the tutorial came in, that their stuff couldn't inspire the same.
That's a great way of putting it. I've always thought that the internet will eventually have the Bob Ross of tutorials, and what I mean by that is, Bob Ross is essentially giving a YouTube tutorial on how to paint a mountain, but he makes it really engaging and fun, and it has its very own specific vibe and personality. And so many tutorials are like, "Hey guys, I'm Jim from FXFX, and today it's like, hey man, I already know what you're gonna show me. That's why I clicked on the title. So like, trim this first minute," and then, and then from there, like you said, it's very technical and usually not showing something super fun you can do with it. I think the best thing you did with your tutorial is you showed how you could wear like a hat that would, in a silhouette, change the shape of your head and your body, and how then you could use that to like make new possibilities. So like there's gonna be a scene in my video where I'm gonna have somebody release like a cage of geese, and I was thinking like, okay, well, as long as I can find a cube shaped thing like a box, I can have him do the motion, and then so I think it's like it's almost like a form of like magic, where you're able to, maybe not have a big budget to go to these sci-fi locations or have all these crazy props, but if you have a object that resembles another one, you can just replace it out and do, very creative solutions.
I think the craziest realization I had with Ebsynth is I was like, this opens the door to anything. Like, yes, a lot of people have said, like, dude, you should make a whole movie. And I'm like, God, I want to, but God, that's insane. Because I think I have, like, across all 20 of my animations, I don't even have an hour yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the prospect of, like, wrapping my head around, like, doing all the animating I've ever done, if not more, for one project, and then like that's taken away from like the weekly shorts, and then I probably wouldn't be doing as many animations for the channel.
Mm-hmm.
But just so it would take a lot to commit to it, but just the idea that's like I could make Star Wars from my home now. I could literally make Lord of the Rings. Like I like it would be animated, but there's no limit to what I could create with this thing.
Yeah.
And, and that's like just the power of these tools. Because yes, movement is tricky. So like you can't have unless you draw like every frame to the point that you're just doing rotoscoping at that point.
Yeah.
Like full on rotoscoping, but you can't have a crazy fight scene and a lot of movement and action unless you're ready to put in the time for that. But you can have dialogue and creatures and scenery and alien worlds and planets and weird shaped things and unhuman characters uh, and it's just so exciting because even if I'm not crazy enough to commit to that, I hope somebody out there is currently working on it, and I don't know that. So some homebrewed like Star Trek, Star Wars, like their own universe, that like they could bring to life now because this technology has been shown to them.
I was planning on having some fight scenes, so hearing you say that that's especially difficult makes me a little nervous. But I'm gonna try to commit to it. I want to have a character fighting himself essentially, so I'm gonna use like another guy of the same height and kind of like draw this dude's face on both of them essentially.
I think you could get creative with it, and either you accept a lot of the glitchiness, which is what I do when there's a lot of movement. I just accept. Or if you there is a way to create mask that limits the glitchiness that I haven't even really dabbled with because I don't shoot on a green screen.
Mm-hmm.
But or you could like just do stills, kind of do like an anime style fight where like it's like you get the wind up frame and they go, and then you get the contact frame like still edit. It really depends on. There's a lot of ways you could execute it where it wouldn't be such a pain. So I don't want to discourage you.
No, you're not discouraging. It's just it's funny to hear coming from you, especially having so much success with it. Going the anime way with stills is honestly a very smart thing to do. Little side tangent. Corridor Digital has made live action anime shorts, which I think are hilarious because they've gotten the visual style of that sort of thing perfectly. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those shorts, but
I watch a lot of their React stuff, and I think I've seen them bring it up in their React stuff, but I don't know if I've watched them.
They have this video called Anime Baseball, and it's like this highly dramatized thing of just a batter just getting ready to hit a ball in baseball, and like they make this whole dramatic arc out of this guy going up against the umpire, and I think it's cool to see animation imitating live action, and then live action imitating animation back, and it's kind of this call and response thing a lot of the time with art and technology.
Mm-hmm. And I think Ebsynth is cool because it's kind of a midpoint between live action and animation, and it's a way of shooting that most people could wrap their heads around because they've filmed a friend with a cell phone, or they've set up a cell phone on like a tripod, or because that's all you really need. You don't really need good picture quality for Ebsynth as long as it's clear enough for it to trace the lines. So it offers a gateway into a world of creativity because I complain about this a lot with my friend Trent, who's in a lot of the videos. We always get the comments, "Oh, this one," like every live action video. "Oh, this one should be animated. This one should be animated." It's like, it's like the animation to me is a practical tool. If I need a sci-fi or fantasy world, I can't do that. So the animation allow. I'm not just doing it to do it most of the time, you know, which was the joke of the million subscriber video where I did just do it just to do it to show that it's like it doesn't really add much, but
Yeah.
but I think like it's a practical tool, and I think people should consider that. Like, can I accomplish just live action easier? Then maybe you should, but if you can't, then definitely go animation. If it has something like you're saying, like a over the top fight scene or geese or something, it's like you need to animate that. But like there needs to be that consideration of why you're, it doesn't have to be so technical, but why you're shooting something away or why you're creating something away.
Yeah.
And sometimes that answer could be as simple as it was the way I chose to do that day, or it was the way that felt right.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to at least have that feeling about it, you know?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I haven't really started filming this one quite yet, but besides a few tests, and the big thing that I've been trying to wrap my head around is filming at the correct perspectives. So then in the drawing world, it makes sense because, for instance, if I have somebody like in a cockpit, I'm like, okay, I gotta kind of hit it from this angle so that I can draw like the borders, you know, and have people understand what's supposed to be happening. Do you not shoot on a green screen because you don't want to, it's just cumbersome to set up, or is it because you're moving the camera around so much and it would get in the way? Like, where does that come from?
It comes from mainly that I was meeting, like a lot of the films I did, I was meeting up with friends, like the RPG one, and like it was during COVID, so we'd meet up outside, and you know, Ebsynth works as long as the background's still in Ebsynth, it essentially acts as a green screen, you know, because I don't know how the technology works exactly, but I think it's a frame to frame, pixel to pixel comparison with maybe some reference around each pixels. But so as long as the background's not changing in each frame, it will essentially act as a green screen regardless.
Okay.
So it was partially practical because I was like, we're meeting outside. I don't want to bring a green screen and find a way to set it up on a tree or something.
Yeah.
Or I don't have any stands or anything, but it was also like the technology allows you to film anywhere, and that's really fun because you don't have to, you know, have this like hot light. I don't have that hot of. I have a crummy photo light, and that's it. But,
Sure.
But like,
yeah, I noticed you put the cardboard around it too to like angle it more, which, you know, again, just really, creative.
That's the only light I have to this day. But I guess that's you can use a green screen, and the benefit, like I said, would be if you export an alpha mask of it, it will crop out your character, and because you'll see in my videos if a hand moves, there's like the shadow or the history of the hand, and what the mat would do is it would, you know, track your hand as a green screen and cut out on the alpha mat.
Yeah. I was thinking I was going to change the shutter angle to have as little motion blur as humanly possible, so all the individual frames are like crystal clear. I don't know if you do that sort of thing.
Another idea I've had that I haven't tried, and it would take like 2 or 3 times the amount of time to like render, but filming in slow motion just so there's less difference between each frame could be a good idea. You know, I haven't tried it, but like filming and animating in slow motion, then just rendering it back at 24 FPS.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing the same thing. Yeah, the files will be bigger, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to be mindful of your time. I wanted to ask you just one more thing, and then we could get out of here if that's all right.
All right.
I was wondering, like, what. It sounds like you watch a lot of stuff, including, you know, world cinema. What sort of What are you inspired by mostly? And do you watch like a lot of cartoons? Because I think even with like your live action stuff, it has a very cartoonish sensibility. And I'm just wondering like if there's like a main thing that you just love more than anything.
There's a lot of people I could point to, and I think inspiration goes both ways in a weird way. You'll see stuff and then you'll emulate it, and then there's this other weird inspiration where something you're already doing, you see somebody else has done it, and you're like, oh, I'm on the right path. And that's something that happened with me with John Cassavetes in particular. John Cassavetes is the goat for me.
Okay.
But I love his stuff, and he was somebody who was just getting his actor friends together, improvising, and then creating a film through that improv. He had a little more of a process. He would improv, turn it into a script, and then loosely film that script. And then, but what he was doing showed me like, oh, this thing I'm doing is right. This thing I'm doing can result in a film that's cherished or stands the test of time at the very least. And so he was something that where I saw him, I got like retroactively inspired, like, yes, I'm on the right track. And then I kept watching him, and then I got forward inspired because I was like, yeah, now let's like take some of that. So his conversations and the way he tackles love and dynamics of characters is so unlike anyone else, and I love that. And I don't think a lot of this is hard to relate to my shorts sometimes, but I think it relates more to like at least how I tackle love and ideas of love. And then another filmmaker that did that kind of retroactive thing in a more extreme sense is Tsai Ming Lang.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you've heard of him.
I think I've heard the name, but I'm not familiar.
He's done some pretty crazy movies, and my favorite one is called I Don't Want to Sleep Alone. And his movies are just these super, super naturalistic, glacial paced, mood pieces almost, where like, there'll be a shot on like a character like limping down a rainy street, and it will go on for 3 minutes. And they're like, they test your patience, and a lot of the times your mind does wander during his movies, because he has one film called Stray Dogs, and I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but there's one scene that's literally a 26-minute shot of two characters staring straight ahead past the camera, and you don't see what they're staring at. and like he's like that level of extreme. And I don't think my stuff is nearly that patience testing.
Yeah.
But seeing that after I finished Pretend That You Love Me, I dove into his work and I saw it, and I was like, yes, like it doesn't matter if things are long and the camera is still and it doesn't move and it can be as wide as it wants to be, and his stuff is so impactful to me. And I was like, here's a guy shooting a totally different way, and he's completely unconcerned with entertaining you. He's more about selling you on an atmosphere and getting you lost in a feeling, and maybe getting you lost in your own head. I think his later stuff is straight up like meditation based. Like it's like he has this series called The Walker, which is these 20-minute 30-minute shorts of a guy just walking, and that's like a monk walking. And I think his stuff is emulating meditation in a way where it's okay that your mind wanders, and it's okay the film isn't constantly gripping you, because your subjective truth is in this film. Like a film is always victim to your subjectivity, and what you bring into a film is just as valuable as what a film shows you. And I think he showed me that more than anyone.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I already talked about Iranian, Kiarostami, Jafar Panahi. Those two guys really do a lot of incredible work of like, I guess the one I'd talk about that would sound the most exciting is Jafar Panahi, because of the films he made. In his film Taxi, there's like, he reads off the list of like what the Iranian government says films need to be, and it's absurd. But like essentially he got banned by the government from making movies, and he was like put on house arrest, and and uh, and
That's
he
that's
uh,
that's crazy.
and he made this great movie, like documentary, maybe not documentary, it's tough to say, called This Is Not a Film,
Mm,
during the time he was banned from making films.
yeah,
And it's kind of him at home, just like rummaging with this idea of like, if he says it's not a film, then is it not a film, and
yeah,
therefore he couldn't get arrested for it.
yeah,
And you know, there's just, it's a whole different world, but there's a relatability there in that the anxieties and pressures you put on yourself can, and what a film needs to be and should be, are the things you should first act against. You know, the things you should first be like, okay, what are these anxieties? How do I confront them? How do I defy them? And just make a movie,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay, well,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, those are really good answers. I always really like hearing people talk about the stuff that they really like and are passionate about. That I love being able to share with people the sort of stuff I'm really into, and vice versa. And like the main reason that question was on my mind is because I think a lot of your videos, if not all of them, kind of tackle very specific expectations from tropes, and a lot of the time media tropes, like with the not the Galactic Emperor, but the other space one, where you have the guy giving the orders about the insane asteroid belt, and him just being like, well, let's just not drive through it. I think that it shows that you have a very keen eye to I don't want to say cliches, because that seems a little dismissive, but you understand, kind of traditional story and character arcs, and you're kind of playing with them in ways that I think people enjoy, because it's a little bit, off what we're told to expect.
And I think I've always said, number one, the best way to learn how to make movies is just do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to learn nearly as fast in a classroom as you would just grabbing a camera and filming and recording audio and editing, and the second best way is to watch movies.
Yeah.
Watch a lot of movies. And I think way down the list somewhere is film school. And I'm not that negative about film school, but trying to point to like 4 years of education and trying to like in my head wrestle with what I actually learned in those 4 years, I'm like, how much of that was the school and how much of it was just my passion and drive and creating stuff?
Yeah.
And could that have happened without school? Maybe. And probably.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way. I've actually talked about that a little bit at length with other filmmakers on here. So it's anytime I see somebody talented echoing that sort of sentiment, it makes me feel a little bit better. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. I hope I didn't eat up too much of your day, but I had a really good talk. I enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. You didn't eat up too much of my day. This is just saving me from putting in a ridiculous day animating. I probably needed a break anyway. So
Yeah.
thanks for having me, and I will probably listen to this while animating. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, I'll stop the recording here in a moment. But yeah,
Right.
thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. It was great. I think we went on like the middle was funny because it was just about iPhones and something.
Yeah.
But we bookended it with filmmaking, which
Yeah. Well, when I have people on, I think, even though I'm having them on because maybe I have a specific interest in what they do, that's not necessarily what we have to talk about, because we all exist in the world and just kind of have these thoughts and whatnot.
And not like everyone is not their main career or hobby. Everyone is a combination of all their interests.